Prayer is an attempt to recapture some piece of what was lost at the beginning in terms of our fellowship with God. There was a state of fellowship that existed between Adam and Eve and God at the beginning, and in that paradisical garden. But they lose the garden because of their sins, and the sword, the fiery sword, is sent blocking the entrance to the garden, so they can't get back to the tree of life, and they also can't get back to that closer fellowship with God. So they're at a distance from him now, but he still talks to them. He still speaks to them, like in chapter 4 of Genesis, after they're kicked out of the garden. In chapter 3, he still speaks to them, and they actually have conversations. They have need, he has paternal concerns, but they don't have a place to meet anymore. They don't have an innocent place. They don't have a place where they can just relax with one another and be in a good relationship, a simple, uncomplicated relationship with one another. Later then in the Pentateuch, when the tabernacle is made, when the Lord has the tabernacle made, and then later when the temple is made according to the same model of the tabernacle, to be a permanent tabernacle instead of a movable tent, it's made with a sort of Edenic structure. Like the temple and the tabernacle face in the same direction as Eden faced, apparently, because it says that Adam and Eve, when they were driven out to the east of Eden, and that was the direction that the tabernacle and the temple also faced, so that by going back into the tabernacle and the temple, part of the imagery was that you were going back into a place where you had the ability to meet God actually face to face, the ability to meet God on a neutral ground in a favorable setting where you would not be destroyed for your sins. But it's not as good as the original, and it has to be purified regularly, or else it would not be a fitting place anymore either, and God would not dwell with them in peace anymore. And so the temple is especially where they go to pray. Like, it's not just where they go to bring their sacrifices. They also go there especially to pray, because it's the house of God. So the temple as a house of prayer is part of the same theme. Prayer is an attempt to recapture some piece of what was lost at the beginning in terms of our fellowship with God. And sometimes we think of it as primarily we have needs and we go to God. And this, Luther deals with this in the catechisms, that is what drives us to pray most often. That is what constantly reminds us that we have this need. That God is the one to whom we must go for all things. And we are not sufficient in ourselves, and therefore we are driven to pray. But I think every Christian at a certain time in their life, maybe not on a regular basis, but will have an experience of prayer where they start out that way, but it ends up being longer than they were planning to pray, and they come away feeling like I actually spent time with God just now. Like we had a time of fellowship, and that's a little bit of recapturing what was lost in the Garden of Eden, and what will be regained in full in the resurrection and the heavenly city and the restored Eden. Because if you look at the end of the book of Revelation, the heavenly city, once it comes down from heaven, is basically described as a garden. It's like a garden with walls around it. It's like Eden again. Only this time it says nothing unclean will ever enter it.